You may have played poker, but playing poker in Texas is a different animal. This is the Texas Poker Podcast with Tyler and Clint.
Hello, this is the Texas Poker Podcast. I'm Tyler. This is Clint.
What's up, y'all?
We are back with episode 97.
Episode 97. So this should be a kind of interesting podcast. A couple drinks in where me and Tyler just got done shooting pool over at Rowdy's, and that was a pretty good time over there in the spring side of Houston.
It's funny because I was telling you when we were playing pool that you've been playing pool longer than me, and right about 4 drinks is kind of that break-even point. When you're 4 drinks in, that's when the game begins.
Yeah, like I've always thought at the poker table, like, you know, these people who drink and just end up going crazy. Like, I'm not good enough pool or apparently poker whatsoever to have, like, just multiple drinks. Both my games slide at that point. I've always wanted to be one of those people that got better as time got on.
Well, you know what's weird is, like, everyone always talks about, and I've always preached this, that you shouldn't drink while you play, right? You're playing for profit. It's like a side job. You shouldn't drink while you play.
Fair.
But there's always a but. I do feel like we've played at some private games where drinks have been going. I do feel like I'm able to play so much tighter when drinking. Have you ever noticed that? Like, for me, I just kind of sit there and relax. I don't have any, I don't want to say anxiety, but I don't have that itch to really get in there and mix it up. You know, I can kind of just sit there, relax, enjoy my drink, play on my phone, and really just knit it up.
Oh, me and you are the complete opposite. When I drink, I mean, there's all kinds of not give a shits going on. Like, I can play poker now and drink and do pretty decent, but I remember before, like, it would just be like a shit show. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of not caring about calls, playing way loose of pre-flop. So I'm actually the absolute opposite. But I have gotten better with time. Like, now my pre-flop game is so kind of... Like, the more I drink, the more static it becomes. I don't really do as much out-of-the-box stuff. So, you know, when you're doing just a lot of GTO stuff, you're just doing it by the book, basically. I don't have to worry about it as much. So it's gotten a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting whenever we talk about it, just because I've noticed that. Because here's something that people don't talk about that often, though. Like, whenever you play in a private game or a game where it's all kind of the same people and it's like a party atmosphere, you don't have to, but people do notice that if everyone's drinking, having a good time, and you're the only one not drinking, I don't want to say put you in a bad light, but you might not get that invite again.
Well, I will think, like, our Thursday game, I wouldn't say you have to drink by any means. I don't think anybody cares that much. But I feel like it helps if you are. I mean, if it's kind of a enjoyable kind of social party atmosphere and you're not drinking, then you better be pretty sociable to kind of counteract it.
No, I agree. This is something that Jonathan Little always said, like, about these type of games, is even if you're crushing the game, people will invite you back if you're a joy to play with, if you're really enjoyable at the table. So that means don't just sit there with your headphones on, glasses on, hoodie on. You know, really, you know, interact with people, which just seems weird to have to say.
I will say this is kind of like something I think is kind of up and down with me. I think I am usually enjoyable to play with, but I go through stints where I'm not as much. Where I know, like, when I go through, like, I'll go through months where I just go through card deadness. I'm just looking for ways to just kind of distract myself to get through it. When I'm really into the game, I think I'm enjoyable, but I think there are times I just branch out and do my own thing, and it's something I need to work on in my game.
All right, well, let me correct everything you just said.
Okay.
I would say you're definitely someone who's very enjoyable to play with until someone says something dumb. And then you cannot resist. You know, I don't want to say arguing, but letting them know your side.
Oh, 100%. Well, yeah, I will say, I don't know. I mean, me and you deal with a lot of stupidity on a lot of time basis that when people do that, well, especially like when I'm like, I know it's on the dealer to correct it, but I know they don't want to because it's not. They don't want to affect their tips when they have to correct stupidity. I will kind of jump in here and there, and like I say, I think it's just who I am. It's not even something I'm really trying to fix anymore.
Oh, no, it doesn't seem like you're trying to fix it. I was just saying.
If anything, Tyler's like, well, you're going head first into
yeah,
it.
I feel like you're leaning all the way in. But, no, I would say you're definitely pretty enjoyable. Me, I don't really make much of an effort in most games. Normally, I'll just sit there quietly and just kind of do my own thing. But I'm also not playing in private games where that is needed.
Yeah, you can be sociable, but a lot of times you're not. I will say that. So it's a...
And there's a reason why, too, which is kind of always, I'm sure we've talked about it because we're almost 100 episodes deep, so great chance we've talked about this. But like I used to tell you, and I go to the same place all the time, like back when I was going to 88 every day, in whatever room, I almost don't want to build that rapport with people because I know sometimes people will soft play their quote-unquote friends, and I'll be friendly with people as long as they don't want to soft play. Like, I say definitely, cutthroat, try to take all my money. I do not want you to check the nuts back to me or just call with the nuts or something because I'm not going to do the same service to you. Or I don't want to have that decision whenever, like, I know you've soft played me before and all that. I don't like that dynamic. So I had friends at 88, but we played so hard against each other every time. And that I don't mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like the whole like you're friendly with somebody and you've soft played them before it's come back to help me so many times. I don't typically do it that much. I can notice 2 times where it has really affected my game. There was one time in New Orleans, me and this lawyer struck up a pretty good conversation, and we were just kind of chilling out. And I flopped trips, and we were going back, and he's like, and then we going back and forth, and I was like, I re-raised him. He called, and he's like, hey, you know what? Just don't re-raise. He's like, don't worry about it. And like, I was like, okay. Well, he had trips with the ace kicker. I had trips with the queen kicker. There was another time just recently with one of my friends at the private game. And, it was one of those that I flopped really good and turned really good, and I did bet. And then on the river, I did bet, but I was like, it was like a $40 bet. We were kind of shorthanded. I didn't want the game to break. And I'm like, just don't call. And he's like, really? He's like, I got a decent hand. I was like, just don't call. And he folds, and I show him that I think I turned the nuts. But it was kind of a short stack game. I didn't want the game to break and all that. And then later he does the same thing for a hand that I would have gotten stacked on I could have easily gotten stacked. And I don't typically soft play. I'm going to sit there and bet pretty hard, but depending on kind of the atmosphere of the game, I will here and there just not like go for every dollar type deal.
But it's also different when you're playing at the same place every day like I was.
That's a fair point. Because, I mean, like at that point, you were making a lot of money and it was a ton of profit and you're playing with the same people every day. So, like what I'm talking about are one-off sessions, whereas you're talking more of like a overall point.
Right. Well, like every situation is different, obviously, right? Whenever you're in a private game, that might be something that's needed, right? That's also like the being social, being a joy to be with. That kind of plays into that. But whenever you're playing at one of these local rooms where you're playing with the same general people, it's just a little different. I just kind of think that's kind of always interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm definitely almost never looking to soft play. Look, I'm going to a degree. I'm going to 3-bet just the same because one is. It's kind of unfair to that person if I don't. I mean, like, if I'm just calling with their bet with a call and I have pocket queens or something, I mean, that's almost more dangerous than me 3-betting to a degree.
Okay, that's how you get both of you stacked.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a like the vast majority of the time, like 99% of the time, I'll play my hand just as it is.
I do have one though situation where I soft played, which you probably haven't heard this.
What's that?
So Shelton and I were at the free roll, right, at Paramount, and I bust out of the tournament as per usual, and very early. So Shelton is still playing. I go to play cash and sit down and just go on a tear. I mean, I'm up $800 in the first hour and a half.
That'll cover that free roll.
In a 1-2 game. So, I mean, it's just every hand is going my way, getting all the value. Just things are going great, right?
Right.
Somebody 3-bets me in the 1-2 game, and Shelton was already, done. He was leaving the free roll, so we were about to leave. I told him it's my last hand, and I get 3-bet. I have pocket kings.
You get 3-bet, you have pocket kings.
So, they 3-bet to like $60 or whatever. And I just go all in, turn my cards face up. I said, you can decide what you want to do.
Oh, wow. This is like my pocket aces back in the day. I'm shocked that you did this.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was already up at that. And, well, if I won that 3-bet, $850 if they fold. But I was like, this is what I have. This is my last hand. I'm leaving no matter what. You can call. You don't have to,
I mean, I will say, like, if I'm going to do something like this, it is going to be on the last hand. Like, it's always a weird dynamic when, especially if you didn't announce that it was your last hand before this hand, and then all of a sudden you're going to win this gigantic pot.
Well, it wasn't. It was kind of like Shelton came up. I was like, hey, I'm out. And I was like, oh, well, I'm out, guys, because we rode together. But I was already the hand was already in starting. Mm-hmm. I had already raised, then got 3-bet after I said it.
I kind of see your point here. I definitely think you have a pretty solid point here to do what you did, because this is just a very specific situation where your ride's leaving.
Well, I was driving, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but if that person's ready to go, and especially someone who you're trying to kind of like introduce into poker, but hasn't really, you don't want them just waiting 2 hours and that be their first poker experience. No, I definitely think you have a solid point of doing this. I don't mind this at all.
Yeah, the person folded, so I mean,
yeah,
whatever.
I think, like I say, I mean, it's one of those that I'm not certain I do in that spot, but I will say I don't blame you at all.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of those ones where I'm like, I'm just going to take this $800 win and hit the road.
Solid point. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess you played some pretty interesting sessions. You have one where I don't even know any of the hands or what happened or anything.
So me and you kind of ended up at the last podcast with Texas. God Almighty, talking about the Texas Card House tournament on Thursday. It was a $50,000 guaranteed. Me and you are not really tournament players, although I've been having a great run on tournaments. And it was a $50,000 one-day event on Thursday. Very seldom do we get to do guarantees that big, so I ended up jumping on it. End up going there, and first let me say finding it was such a pain because they didn't have it in like the block letters it's in a
like on the sign, like in the not shopping center, but
yeah, in a shopping center. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm having a trouble finding this word here.
It's because we were out partying.
five drinks in, you can't think of the word shopping center. So I go there. It's like a little bitty little flyer that's in the front of there. So I have trouble finding it. But
which I'm sure though they're going to fix. I mean, obviously this is, when they're opening, I'm sure they're going to have a real sign here in a little bit.
Oh, once they have a real sign, it'll be great.
Yeah, I think this will end up being solved within months. I mean, maybe even weeks.
Yeah, if you turn in there, look for Sun Ski and Sports and H&R Block, and even if you can't find it, you're in the right spot.
Yeah.
Because don't look for Texas Card House. And I was going in there, and I was like, well, god dang, this is... One of the things I did not like was it was valet parking, which I'm kind of not a fan of.
Like mandatory valet parking?
I think so. It seemed
what
like
happens
it.
if you just park and walk in?
I didn't see any spots. I will say that. It seemed like valet parking. So I go in there, but once I get in there, I was shocked at how nice it was. It's really, you can tell Texas Card House really maintained their brand. It still had that kind of same atmosphere. It was super nice. The bar was super nice. The tables were great. The staff was super professional as always. Again, I always say Texas Card House is the best run place in Houston. And this new one in Houston, it's right there on Westheimer. In a spot where I'm not certain I would have chosen because there's just so many right there. Or like in that little area of Houston on Westheimer and Richmond, you now have Prime, you now have Empire, you now have Legends, you now have Elite Social. You have that new one that just opened up, River Room, and now you have Texas Card House. But if I put bets on one to survive, I definitely think Texas Card House would be right up there.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. I'm sure they joined there to compete. They didn't join there to try to find an empty spot. So yeah. I'm sure they're well aware of those rooms. I'm sure they're there to, really kind of compete with all those businesses.
100%, and they did a great job.
Which we always say, whenever these rooms are competing like that, the winners are always the players.
Oh, 100%. The competition is absolutely amazing for the players. So it's going to be interesting. The River Room seems to be like a super nice place, but I have not seen a lot of action there going. Texas Card House is super nice, and like I say, it's going to be a very interesting thing. But they were, like I say, as always, super professional. Everything was super nice. I go in there and register. This $50,000 guaranteed tournament is just booming. There's obviously a ton of players. We go in there and, I constantly say tournaments are not a great place for value. You really need to stick to cash games. The problem being is tournaments, even if they are higher ranked than cash games, the players are just insane.
Which is weird because this is, I don't want to say, this is far from a free roll. This is a $300 buy-in.
Yeah, I was going to mention too, like $300 buy-in. I also do the Friday $15,000 guarantee, which is basically a $240 buy-in. And you just see stuff that you would, I won't say you never see in a cash game, but you see it more often in a tournament. So one of the hands I end up with is pocket fours. This is how good this tournament is. People wanted to straddle in this tournament. They were straddling, like blind raising. A straddle doesn't exist in a tournament, which they tried to get me to do, and I'm like, well, no. I'm not going to play a 75 blind tournament when everybody's playing, when all the other tables are playing a 250 blind tournament. But the fact that the table was wanting to do this is still amazing. 4-4, I raised $2,400 over a blind raise. The flop is 10-7-2. He checks. I, with pocket fours, bet $1,500.
Right, standard like C-bet down bet situation, I would say.
Exactly, a standard C-bet down bet. He calls. The turn is a 4.
Well.
Yeah, turning me a set.
I'm sure you're loving this.
He checks. I bet $5,000 and he calls. The river's an ace. He checks, and then I bet $10,000, trying to definitely go for value here.
I was thinking maybe a little bit more on that ace, that maybe he's not folding if he hits that ace, would be my kind of immediate thought.
Well, me being the preflop raiser, I think it hits my range way more than his.
True, but I also think he's going to fold a lot of the time when that ace comes, so I'm thinking he's only going to call with pretty good hands.
That's a good read, because he folds showing a 7 and says, I hit the ace.
Yeah, but that's why I like sizing up there, just because you have such a strong hand that if he happens to have something good there, he's going to be calling most likely.
You're really only looking like ace 10, ace 7 maybe.
Oh, no, for sure. But
yeah,
I think he folds everything else, which is why I do that.
That's fair, yeah, which, he did. He showed a 7, so, it's a...
What if he would have showed ace 7?
Oh, God. It's
Say, your soul gone.
So, would have been my... Yeah, 100%. I end up with Queen 9 of clubs. We're still very early in the tournament. A tight player raises to 1,200. I call with queen nine of clubs.
I'm assuming you're in the big blind.
No, I was not.
Because like it says under the gun here in my notes.
Yeah, the tight player is a good Euro player. Call with queen nine of clubs, and also the big blind calls. The flop is ace queen seven with one club, and I have queen nine of clubs. The pre-flop raiser bets 1,000. With me having middle pair and a backdoor flush draw, this is a standard call.
Yeah, loving the call.
Okay. Other player folds. The turn is a queen, giving me trips. Player bets 2,700. I just make the call.
Yeah, that's kind of. I was like, would hate to. Yeah, no, I'm loving how you're playing this one.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, I think whenever the middle card pairs, I think it's. If you raise here, it seems like your hand is so face up.
Yeah, but it's so tempting.
It is very tempting. River 4, he checks. I bet 5,000, which is a kind of a tiny bet into the spot. He folds.
Oh, wow. I mean, talk about. It seems to not matter what size you bet.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it became very apparent what I had, but I was going for anything. So the beginning of the tournament is just going splendidly. I mean, the players at my table are just losing their mind. I saw one player call probably about 100 big blind call with 10 high.
And he was good, right?
No, he lost. So it was, I mean, it is a great table. I'm just beyond elated to be at this table. The blinds are at 4 and 800 at this point. I raised 400 with queen jack of spades. Big blind calls. The flop is king 10-9 with 2 spades.
Okay, and what do you have? So it's king 10.
Queen jack of spades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I flopped the absolute stone cold nuts with the second nut flush draw. I mean, the dream flop. Player leads for 2,700. I just call. Do you like the call or you want to raise here?
How many people behind?
I think it's just heads up.
Oh, I think I like the call because, I mean, you also block the flush draw. And, I mean, what are we worried about here? What are we worried about turning? I don't think much, right?
100% was definitely my thought.
Yeah, so this is, again, tempting to raise, like the call, though.
So I call on the plan of raising almost every turn bet, was my thought. The turn is a 10, and he bets 6,000. So the flop is now king 10, 9, 10. With the board pairing, 9, 10 being a boat, king 10 being a boat, I just make the call.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do whenever you raise and he re-raises?
That was kind of my thought. This is such a weird turn card.
I mean, I don't know, though. I mean, we just monsters under the bed here. Like, I mean, we're talking like, what if he does this? I mean, I don't know. How deep are we here? How many?
We are pretty deep. This is still very early in the tournament. I was 40,000 to begin the hand.
I mean, I guess I'm just calling too, probably. Like, I guess a board pair is literally the only thing we're worried about, or one of your cards pairing making a 4-liner to a straight, but I don't know. This is kind of a close one for me, I think.
This one was pretty close. I just figure...
Because I feel like we're kind of towing the line on overplaying this hand with a raise.
That was kind of my thought. This gets really weird when the river's a 10.
I mean, this is so lame.
I mean, 100%. So the flop is king 10-9 with 2 spades. I have queen jack of spades. I flop the nuts with the back door not the front door second nut flush draw and a straight flush draw. The turn is a 10 that pairs the board. Player bet 6,000. I decide to just call. The river is a 10. He checks. I think about turning my straight into a bluff here.
I mean, I don't think you should,
But I check it. He says he has a boat. I turn over my hand in frustration. He has ace 8, which is not a boat, and flips it over. He says he misread his hand, which I did believe. He seemed to be like a pretty kind of a novice player kind of. So I don't know. It's but I end up taking it with a straight. After really, this is a big lesson just to always show down your hand. Because if I muck my hand and he shows over ace 8, this becomes he gets this pot on basically a pretty bad angle.
Yeah, I don't know. This sounds angly to me. Like, if I'm playing this in a regular card room, this definitely feels... we've definitely covered an angle of this exact situation. Obviously, that situation was a very clear angle. This one seems like there's some gray area to where it might not have been an angle, but like you said, that's always just shows the importance of always tabling your hand.
Yeah, the way he played it, and I didn't see him do anything that made me think that he was that type of player the rest of the game. I'm going to tend to give him the benefit of the doubt. It definitely seemed like a weird situation and a good one where I just happened to have turned my hand up. But it was definitely could have been an angle. If he gave me any other reasons to think of it, I would have definitely say it was. So it gets into the tournament. It's kind of ticking down. There was 260 entries. It's getting closer and closer. The blinds are 600, 1,200. A player raises to 3,600. I call with king 10 of diamonds. Small and big blind call, and the flop is jack 3-6. It checks around.
2 diamonds or 1 diamond or none?
I don't have anything listed, so I'm assuming either 1 or no diamonds.
I'm assuming it doesn't play a role if it's not listed.
Yeah. The turn is a king. Pre-flop raiser bets 5,000. I call. So the flop is jack 3-6. The turn is a king. It's heads up to the river. The river's a 9. Pre-flop raiser bets 10,000.
Wait, you have king 10 or king 9?
I have king 10.
Oh, I just like a call. Nice standard call here, right?
I thought this was pretty much a snap call for me. I call and I'm good. I didn't know if you were gonna think that maybe you should think about folding here, but
oh no, I'm not folding. I'm thinking about raising. No, I'm kidding.
Oh God.
No, I think this is. To me, it seems very standard call.
He was giving me really good odds with top pair. Not great kicker, but decent kicker. When you're giving me crazy odds, especially in a room that's I'm getting a lot of weird stuff going on, I'm just gonna kind of play my odds and call it.
I'm assuming you were good and he had a jack.
I don't know what the hell he had. I showed the king 10 and he mucks.
No, Mom.
And so,
which is always weird because one of the things that I'm not saying this particular guy, but just you do see in novice players when they bluff, they just give you way too good of odds. You're gonna call that with so many things, such a small bet, that if you're gonna bluff, you need to bet way bigger.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like I say, I think tournaments really cater to rec heavy players, and you saw that a lot. There's a bluff, it just did not make a lot of sense.
Well, you see that sometimes in cash games too, which I always kind of, I don't want to say I take mental note when playing, but because we've talked about some situations where it makes sense to make a small bet on the river as a bluff. But, I would say 90% of the time, you don't want to give someone great odds to call with ace high and sometimes.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. It's you see, a lot of bluffs that don't make a lot of sense where, like I say, there are smaller bets. Because, the smaller the bet, the less you have to be right. So you're just calling that much more often. So, we go down. It gets to the kind of the bubble. Gets closer and closer, and I'm pretty short stacked. So ends up eventually, finally, the bubble burst at about 35 players. End up cashing, doing somewhat decently, but never a big chip stack. You know how I am. I'm it's either win or nothing. I'm gonna be shoving a lot, and which I was. I ran into, I think, an ace-king into king-queen, and he hit a queen. So that was tough. I then ended up not going out, but the final hand was ace-10 suited. I jam it all in, get called by pocket eights, turn an ace, and he rivers a straight. And then at that point, it was just floating around. But end up cashing 20th place for $760. So
I mean, you're taking that every day of the week. I mean,
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like the tournament. Like whenever we see the vloggers talk about the tournaments, like even when you cash, it's kind of a sad thing because you're like, I'm 20 places away from $16,000, but like you say, you're still taking it.
oh yeah, that's. I don't say that's the reason why I don't like tournaments, but that is definitely one of the drawbacks. Where if it's not first, it's always kind of like, what if, what could have been situation.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about tournaments. The good thing is the excitement.
I would say, like you always say, the finality of it.
Yeah, I like the finality of it, and I like the excitement where you're just having to shove it in, and like there's a first place and all of that. It seems like a more almost like competitive sports environment versus cash games, which is just more grindy, but obviously the cash games, you just have way more wins and way more good sessions, right?
I mean, you better.
Yeah, no kidding. You better be cashing over 20% or it's a sad day for you.
Yeah. Say, I don't even know how recreational you'd have to only be cashing 20% of your cash games.
Well, you asked me that on about November last year, and I would have let you know. It's so it was a really good experience. I think Texas Card House is gonna. Most rooms, I'm just saying, are not doing that great around that area of Houston because it's so competitive. But Texas Card House is going to be there to compete, so I think they will have a very a good adds to the poker rooms that are going on down there.
Definitely one I want to go check out. So
it's there's just so many good options down there. So you didn't play at all this week, did you, Tyler?
Nope, had a jam-packed schedule. So
man, I only played one other session. I did have some interesting hands. I know probably the cash game hands do a little bit better for the podcast. They're just a little bit more interesting than the tournament hands for the most part. This one was really interesting. I have Ace King. I'm playing 1-3. I have Ace King. The small blind is straddled to 6. I'm in early positions. I make it 20. Loose player makes it 50. Comes back around to me. What are you doing?
I mean, you said that this was straddled to 6.
Yeah.
One, I'm opening bigger than 20, but I'm raising. I mean, 100% I'm raising. I'd probably make it like, let's do 175.
Make it 135.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that far off. So it's so I make it 135. The player calls, and I'm 420 effective. I should let you know.
Wait. He made it 50. You made it 135.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that seem small?
I mean, it's a 4-bet. Should be small, right? Your range is super tight here.
Yeah, I guess you're right. What did I say? 175, 135. Yeah, I don't know. I think I make it. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems so small. I guess with the straddle pop, and I don't know. I think it would have been a little bit bigger, but you're probably right.
The player calls. The flop is Jack 7-7. I bet 90.
I like this.
Okay, yeah, it's very standard. He calls. The turn is an ace. I mean, at this point, obviously, I go all in. I mean, I do not have that much behind. So, like I say, I started out with 420, so I probably have like 150 behind. So I turn an ace, I go all in, he folds. So later,
great result.
Later, someone else was asking about the hand at the table, and I thought I got lucky hitting that ace. Apparently, he had Queen 10 of diamonds, so I was actually ahead the entire way.
Isn't that weird how that can be?
Yeah. I mean, it's very...
You know how tilted you would have been if you would have turned a king?
Well, not really. I mean, he would have just turned a straight draw.
Or no, sorry. If he would have hit it straight. Wouldn't he have a gutter? What did he have?
He had Queen 10. It was Jack 7-7 on the flop.
Right. Oh, turned an ace. So I was saying, I guess if he would have rivered a king.
Oh, I mean, I would definitely be tilted if he goes runner under straight.
Yeah, sorry. I might have said turn. I meant if he would have rivered the king.
So yeah, it's a so that was a very interesting hand. I mean, very interesting to see what would happen if the ace did not turn, because that puts me in a very weird spot.
I mean, this is like another one that we talked about last week where you could just lose just based on position.
I mean, it's very possible. I mean, it's a 4-bet pot. I think that's for the most part standard check that turn.
That's what I was thinking. If it's a deuce of clubs there,
Yeah. It's once he bets. I mean, am I just calling with ace high? I mean, I'm getting amazing odds, but I mean, are you making that call with ace high there?
depends.
I mean, it's very dependent. I mean, mostly I'm just giving my credit for a crazy call because I don't think I actually do. So I'm in a double board bomb pot. I know these don't convert well to a podcast audience, but it is kind of an interesting hand. I am on the button and it checks to me. I hit trip sixes with an ace kicker on the turn. And a jack high flush draw on the other board. It checks all the way to me on the button again. I'm like, well, with it checking to me and everybody playing this super weak, I go ahead and pot this.
Hoo-wee. Hoo-wee. Wow.
So one person says I'm just the same guy who I just played the ace king hand against says I'm just trying to steal the pot and calls. I river the flush on the bottom board. Loose in that same guy checks to me. I pop for 90. He tanks. He says, I think you have a 6. I'm like, I tell him you're right. I flip over the 6 and show him. And then he ends up tank calling, and I scoop. When I also showed the jack high flush. He had 2 pair.
Well played. That was well played.
So it's that was kind of an interesting hand. Like I say, same guy, very, very interesting hand. This is by far the most interesting hand. Jack 10 of hearts in the big blind. It limps to me, and I make it 25.
Oh, nice. I like this.
Yeah, there were a lot of limps in there, so I made it actually 25 on top, actually, I believe. 2 call with that same loose player calling. Flop is ace 7 jack with 2 diamonds.
But you have hearts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Check. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Check. The loose player donks 45 into me. I make the call.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I have a middle pair. I think it's too weak to fold. It's a pot-sized bet. About a half pot-sized bet. So I turn a 10 for 2 pair. I check and flow. The player jams for $600 effective. So he overbets the pot by probably about 4 times. And I turn 2 pair.
Probably.
A tough spot against a kind of wild player, too.
I think I'm folding here a lot of the time. I mean, this could be... He could have just drilled a gutter for a broad... Well, actually, I guess, yeah, could have drilled a straight there. Don't think he's playing a flush draw like this. You also kind of have, like, the worst 2 pair, right? Like, there's also the ace. You said it was ace jack?
Ace jack. So when I was going through this, I was very... Like, I did not think ace jack was a possibility because I was in the big blind. It was limp to me. So I'm like, a loose player has to check ace. It has to limp ace jack here.
Or I'm more like ace 10. I mean, but...
Yeah, it's a ace 10 he has to limp. I figure 8-9 offsuit is a possibility for a straight, maybe. I don't know that he's donking that into me. Ace 7 offsuit. I tank for about 2 minutes on this hand. I end up folding.
Yeah, I don't think I would have tanked for... I mean, I would just be snap folding, so...
Really? On this good of a turn? 2 pair?
I mean, for a 4x pot, yeah.
And he shows ace 7 for a flop 2 pair.
Yeah, I think it's... I mean, I don't want to say easy fold, but Yeah, I mean,
it was one of those. I didn't think a lot of hands made sense, but I mean, how often are players just doing this with nothing? So yeah, I mean, I was because I told him I was like, it's either. I mean, the only thing I'm folding to is 8-9 off or Ace-7 off. I mean, but he did show Ace-7 off, so I was like, I mean, I did not think it was an easy fold because of the way this player played, but. Like I say, I mean, even crazy players usually have some reasoning behind it. And
well, I mean, if he would have played the hand, I don't want to say correctly, but a little bit calmer, he easily stacks you here, I think.
Oh, 100%. Because I folded Jack-10 face up.
Yeah.
And then he shows Ace-7. And he's like, well, I should have just made it 200. And he was going over the PLO table. It was last hand. He's like, that's why I did that. But he's like, I should have just made it 200. I'm like, I'm 100% calling.
Oh, I mean, he makes it 200. You're getting stacked this hand.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky that this player played it this way and actually allowed me to get away from it. So on this, I end up moving tables and nothing crazy happens. I end up raising a lot of really good pre-flop hands, missing c-betting, getting called, and having to give up. And I kind of dwindle my stack down a lot. I end up cashing out for like a $130 profit once I kind of came down quite a bit.
But you also said this wasn't that long of a session either, right?
It was only like a 3-hour session.
I mean,
actually less than that because it says 81 an hour. So probably like 2.5-hour session.
I mean, taking that every day of the week, even though it's always kind of sad to get dwindled down, but. I mean, what's it called? It's hard to complain about winning, take it from someone who loses or someone who lost that day, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of an emotional thing, and I try not to use this in poker, but one of the things that I do know my weaknesses is I get real tilted when I'm way up, and I come back, and I have a losing session. So once I was way up, not way up, but I was up quite a bit, and came back down, I'm like, well, let me just take the profit.
Were you ever up a buy-in?
Yeah, I was up over in a buy-in.
Oh, wow, okay. I mean, yeah, I can see that could be annoying.
Actually, I bought in for 400, so I was up about a buy-in.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that'll happen. Sometimes you got to see some flops and just lose, I mean.
Yeah, it was one of those, like, I don't think anything was badly misplayed. It was kind of the variance kind of settling in. But let's say I was like, well, you know, I've been here about 3 hours. I can kind of just call this a good day. And, you know, I always look at it as an average. If I went there every single day and made, you know, this much money, would I be happy? And I was, and called it good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess is that all your sessions? Because if not, we're going to wrap this thing up right here.
That's it.
All right. On that note, this concludes the Tex Poker Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.
That was the Texas Poker Podcast. Go ahead and rack up, add time, and we'll see you next week.